I was sleepy.
Got you guys.
How long was it? A couple hours?
Came in and came out them all. Exactly. Exactly.
Great.
How are you, Counselor?
Because you had to be present or something.
Yeah.
Is it your first one? Oh, they go every year.
Just basically, all the stuff around 81. I wanted to hear, like,
He was like, I can't do it.
Good evening, young lady.
Okay.
I was more concerned about how
pleasure.
Bill Gates was ready for the 81 project.
Only nine. Nina just brought it in. He's 16.
Didn't mean to step out of my lane, just conversations about 81.
It's bowling for us.
Sure, we got there. President.
Oh, turn off my phone.
See everything.
I can't turn off. Counselor Rudd might text me during the meeting.
I got the size perfect.
I would text you, but you don't text me back anymore, so why bother?
Mr. Lowe.
Counselor.
All right. Good evening, folks.
Good evening.
I'd like to welcome everybody. This is it's a joint committee meeting with Economic Development, Downtown Metropolitan Planning. My name is Khaled Bey. I'm the chair of that committee. This is a joint committee meeting with the Transportation Committee, and that is the chair of that committee is immediately to my right, Councilor Joe Driscoll. Also with us to the far right, I call him illustrious, but he don't like it, Councilor Pat Hogan, Councilor Joe Majoke, Council President Helen Hudson. Did I skip? I didn't see Councilor Green over there. Councilor Green, you might be shrinking a little bit, man. Councilor Tim Rudd, you're not shrinking. Councilor Latoya Allen, and then also Deputy Mayor Sharon Owens and Chief
Policy
Officer Mr. Greg Lowe. And I'm going to turn it over to this gentleman, and then we'll get to you guys.
Great. So I guess, Greg, we can go with Chief. That's
There you go.
an easy handle, right?
I haven't earned
Chief.
that. I haven't earned that.
So just one point of clarity before we start. Councilor Bay reminded me before we start that at times people get confused between committee hearings and public hearings. So just to clarify, this is a committee hearing. Basically, that means the council has invited Chief Lowe here and Deputy Mayor Owens to present information on Syracuse Build, how it's coming along. And then the councilors reserve the right to call anyone to make comments, and we will be asking the Urban Jobs Task Force to ask a few questions and make a few comments towards the end of the meeting. But in general, it will be, the format tonight will be that Chief Lowe and Deputy Mayor Owens will be presenting, and then the council will be regaling them with questions. So with that being said, if you two want to take the floor.
Yes.
Need to move that.
Make sure you have the mics close.
Thank you, councilors, for the opportunity to give you an update on Syracuse Build. It is ultimately our effort to ensure that our local residents benefit from the opportunities for 81, in particular when it comes to workforce opportunities. As we look at the timeline for 81, and there have been stops and starts, and we're in what we consider another kind of hiatus, we absolutely see this as an opportunity to begin to identify and work with the DOT to find out what the potential workforce opportunities are, but also to begin to prepare the workforce for those opportunities. We are operating under the assumption that there will probably be a PLA associated with the project, so the absolute engagement of the union community is critical to our success, as a PLA will require hiring from local halls. I want to, on that note, especially thank Council President Hudson, who was able to convene a meeting with the entire building trades, everyone, to be able to sit down with her and Dominic Robinson, who is out of town, so unable to be here, from Center State CEO. Also want to thank particularly Councilors Allen and Bay for their engagement in really keeping the light on the need for attention to the residents of the city of Syracuse, but particularly those that live and operate business along that viaduct. And Councilor Driscoll, your work for getting the community grid as the preferred option. So thank you all. I want to acknowledge some of our partners that are in here. We have Lenore Sealy from CNY Works. We have multiple individuals from Center State CEO. In particular, WorkTrain has been providing us the actual staffing infrastructure to keep the process moving. CNY Works is, we found out very quickly, not just through this process, but any workforce operation, when we want to identify partners who can actually send people through when it comes to liability or civil service or insurance issues, we were running into roadblocks, and Lenore has stepped to the plate in order to serve as a conduit for workforce so that they can become workforce under CNY Works as we look to move them into more viable and long-term employment with private and public industry. So Syracuse Build is an initiative that's looking to provide training in what I want to make sure people understand are construction-related fields. Construction opportunities come and go. We see a lot of cranes going on. We see work going on. So there is the opportunity, whether it's in the public sector or the private sector, for construction-related work. But we don't want to leave it there. With long-term sustainable work is taking those construction-related skills that you gain and really applying them to long-term work, whether that be maintenance, whether that be landscaping, whether that be any entity, and even the potential for supervisory work on construction sites. So we want to ensure that we're providing people with the skills necessary. We also want to make sure that we're creating, through the relationships with the union, the pipeline into the union halls. That is going to be critical. Sitting directly at the table are the building trades and the president of the building trades and the president of the carpenters union, which is going to play a major role in this endeavor. Other partners here as well is the Urban Jobs Task Force that I understand you're going to have come up earlier, and I want to thank you for that. They've been an amazing partner in really driving home the need for workforce related opportunities for people who live here in the city to get on site. There's like a special space with this mic. Also, I think I saw Tim Penix out there. I see B. Gonzalez from Syracuse University. Another stakeholder for us is SUNY Upstate, and the city and the county also are stakeholders. And when I say stakeholders, we have brought together a team of industry professionals that are doing a lot of work in the city, have contracts independently, that they have the opportunity to bring people on work. And what we're doing is coming together as a coalition for their commitment to include, in their efforts to include workforce that is local, to embed that within their contracts and their efforts to recruit. These anchor partners have been amazing. It is no stranger to anyone in here the role that SUNY EOC plays, and really be helping with the soft skills as well as the construction-related fields right there in Tim's location that's accessible and right on the footprint. So our community partners are engaged fully in this opportunity, and at this point, I'm going to shift over to Greg, and I'll be back.
So Thank you, Deputy Mayor. While there isn't a physical presentation, and I hope as people came in, if you're able to grab, there's a two-sided sheet of paper with a description of the Syracuse Build Program. Counselors, you all also have the document. And as you look at it as a means of just walking through what the program is, page 1 tells us a little bit about the basics of Syracuse Build, which Deputy Mayor Owens covered. We talk about what the vision for the program is, that with a significant construction activity already happening in the market now, we want Syracuse Build to help create career opportunities for city residents, particularly people of diverse backgrounds, or those who, as it says in the mission, have been marginalized in the past, left behind with opportunity. If you flip to the second side of the document, well, we can take a closer look at the structure of the Syracuse Build program and how we will have it work for our community. Deputy Mayor Owens pointed out that we have 4 anchor project partners. These are the major institutions who control large construction projects, not all of them, but many of them. The city, the county, Syracuse University, and our newest partner, Upstate Medical University Hospital. And in addition then to the anchor project partners, in the middle of the page, you'll see there's a listing of all of the steering committee members who have helped to guide the development of Syracuse Build to this point. Right above it, there's a flow chart that has a whole lot of stuff going on in this flow chart right now, but I think I could simply walk everyone through it as you look at the chart. It's in the section labeled Syracuse Build Career Pathways in the Construction Industry. So if you look at both ends of the chart, there's the job seekers end of the people who are looking for career opportunities, pathways into construction-related careers. And on the far right, we obviously have the anchor partners, our key founding partners who control or have the ability to control major projects. We're doing the work in the middle to create a successful pipeline for people to not just get short-term jobs, but careers. And we're trying to build a sustainable program with the partners that are involved, that this can go on for long into the future. So job seekers will either come to the Syracuse Build program or be found through community partners. On your left of the flow chart, the community partners column. We need to either give people easy access into these pathways or be good at finding people who aren't raising their hand but can benefit from these opportunities. They will receive assessment and help in knowing where to go based on where they are in their pipeline, where they are at their given stage in life, to what training and other opportunities can help them move forward. The staff of Syracuse Build, which is going to be housed at CNY Works, where we have an operating agreement, will provide that assistance. They'll move into our key training partners, one of which is SUNY EOC, who Deputy Mayor Owens mentioned earlier is here with us tonight, and other training partners who will help develop the skills and abilities that these individuals need to be successful. They will gain career guidance and pathways that could either take them directly into a job opportunity with an anchor partner, into a job opportunity with a construction firm or a contractor, or into opportunities that will exist with trade unions for apprenticeship opportunities, ultimately pathways to journeyman potential. We have excellent working partnerships and active participation already from key leaders and organizations in labor already through help of many, including President Hudson, who's helped us with the organized labor community. We've got Carpenters Local 277 and Building and Trades Union committed to enacting and working as steering committee members of Syracuse Build. Through those pipelines, the employers will then create the job opportunities that will create sustainable career pathways for people, job seekers, looking to gain careers in construction. On the handout you have in front of you, we already covered who's involved in the program. It's worth noting that as we've developed Syracuse Build, we've created at least one pilot program to begin to see how the programming works. It's been on the St. Anthony's, related to the St. Anthony's Gardens project, the city project. The city came together and worked with SUNY EOC and CNY Works and WorkTrain. There was a job fair exclusively for that project. 55 people signed up for interest in construction experience. 9 students came through training that occurred in January and graduated actually in early February with basic construction skills, including OSHA 10 certification. 3 of the graduates have applied with the Carpenters Union, 1 accepted, 2 still in progress. 3 graduates have been hired on construction-related jobs. 3 graduates have applied and are waiting for the next stage of construction to move forward on the St. Anthony's projects. So we're starting to see a percentage of these people who went through these programs starting to land some first stage opportunities. This is small scale, where we are hoping that over the course of the future we can complete progress for hundreds of people. This year we would hope to be able to achieve similar success for, we hope, about 100 people through the Syracuse Build program this year. A couple other quick things that I want to note with the operating agreement with CNY Works. That is the best place for people who are interested in information about Syracuse Build or other opportunities for pathways into construction-related fields to contact CNY Works. It's info@cnyworks.com, or by phone it's 315-475-8250. There's some next steps that are happening on the Syracuse Build program as we continue progress forward. The anchor partners are developing memorandums of understanding for their institutional commitment to the program. The operating agreement is in place, and we are in the last third of the stage of hiring the full-time staff for Syracuse Build, beginning with a Syracuse Build director. We'll be bringing on, after that, a Syracuse Build program manager. Those 2 positions we have funded through private support for 2 years to be housed at CNY Works. So we hope that will give us a base to develop the sustainable funding that will be needed for the program going forward. You have the last word. Big table.
Thank you, Greg, for reminding me what I was supposed to say. We want to make sure that in concert with laying the foundation for preparing for the workforce on the 81 project, the mayor is convening a big table. This idea came from the Urban Jobs Task Force. We have worked completely in concert with them to be able to bring this to fruition. So it is going to happen. It is slated for, help me, Greg.
Flip the page.
Flip the page.
No,
Nope.
we don't have that page. Here you go.
20th.
20th on the bottom. Thank you, Councilor Bay. For Friday, March 20th, it's going to be an all 2 to 4:30 all day afternoon session. It is critical that we bring those policy makers at the federal, the state, and the local level into a room. We heard that clearly from the stakeholders in the community, that we can have all the best intentions of preparing a workforce, but if we don't have the gears in motion and positioned properly and oiled properly, properly, they're not going to be able to get on this project. Having the local buy-in of the union is huge, but also DOT, Department of Labor, the Federal Highway Administration, all of our state delegation, our federal delegation, local delegation, members of this council will be there. Our stakeholders will be there, and our partners will be in that room, and community advocates will be in that room, in order for us to be able to present from basically 3 areas. The Urban Jobs Task Force is going to present LA's CWA PLA model, the CWA model, and I'm sure Aggie can be prepared to talk a little bit more about that. They're going to present on that. Senator Gillibrand is going to be presenting about her Highway Administration infrastructure labor bill. That still has some work in the Senate and the Assembly, and then Labor will be there to talk about exactly what has to happen in order to move more people into the union halls. So that meeting is going to take place on the 20th of this month. It's been a lot of work on behalf of the Urban Jobs Task Force and my colleague here. This is a lot of people to try to get together in one room, but we are encouraged that many of these individuals with very busy schedules see the importance of having this discussion and being in that room. And with that.
All right, appreciate it. So I have a few questions and one comment.
Yep.
But to give my disclaimer, Syracuse Build is obviously long overdue. The city hasn't had a workforce development training program since I've been in City Hall, and probably slightly before. And so I say that for 2 reasons. One, to express my satisfaction for the effort, but also so that my questions are not misconstrued.
Oh, yeah.
Right? My questions are for clarity.
Yep.
But certainly not to challenge. So I understand, and this first question is relative to work train. I understand the technical assistance because they've had, Dominic and those guys have done work with taking people through workforce training, development, and placement. The financial support is the one I'm interested in because don't we fund work train?
We funded to the tune in CDBG. The proposed budget before you is $40 or $45,000.
Right.
Yeah.
And so so if you could just explain the financial support they're providing, or what their process is, or what.
So the $45,000 from CDBG is being used exclusively for training for Syracuse Build opportunities. The additional financial support we referenced, WorkTrain made available a portion of the Balmer Fund grants that were announced for workforce development to support staffing, and has also helped raise private dollars to be used to fund the 2 years of positions.
That's good.
Not to stop there, but Hope also.
Yes.
Thank you. And the Hope
$100,000
Yes.
in to offset for the trades because of the cost.
That's right.
Yeah, that's clear. I just want to make sure because it's weird when I hear that somebody's funding us that we fund.
Yep.
Right. So I just wanted clarity on that.
Yeah, it's a fraction of the overall.
Got you.
financing.
And that leads right to my next question, actually, which I think in some respects you may have satisfied, because all of these anchor project partners are all public institutions, no private listed. Mm-hmm. And so just how much private involvement can we expect? I know you just mentioned that he's done some fundraising through private institutions, but.
So I think we can expect more private involvement over time. It'd be one of the things that the Syracuse Build staff will continue to expand our relationships with private institutions. When we talk about the anchor project partners, clearly the first 4 are either large public or one private institution at SU. They are the first stage partners. We hope and expect to see additional over time, hopefully other private institutions that have the ability to drive large projects.
Okay.
Can you just repeat the dollar amount from the grant that you mentioned?
I don't know the specific amount from the Balmer Fund that was dedicated to this. It was a portion of it, but I don't know the amount.
Okay. Thank you.
Also, Counselor, there is residual commitment from private because all of the projects that will be done by these anchor institutions are private companies.
Right,
Okay,
yeah, okay,
okay.
yeah, got you. Obviously, there's a lot of value. The one comment I had was relative to assessment and program referrals, which, you know, is, you have a lot of workforce development initiatives, I'm putting the quotes on purposefully, that often lead to no placement, no referrals, and people get, you know, kind of loose in training and then no jobs. And that's kind of been the history for a long time. So it's certainly satisfying to see that that's a part of the effort.
Counselor, if I just may say, Greg will say yes, that is true, that my fist on the table has been throughout this thing. I don't want to see any more people with folders full of certificates and no job.
Thank you. Thank you. Last question, and maybe the council president could add to this too. Is anybody providing any training on stone masonry? Is that a part of the discussion, considering that we're talking about 81 and the work there, and I don't know how much will be involved. You know, obviously there's a lot of infrastructure changes to come, but I would assume that at least certainly stone masonry and maybe road work will be a part of the discussion. You know, we're gonna have a lot of changes to our roads and infrastructure around 81 and projects in general, obviously, even with, you know, housing and development in general, there's always some work to do with road work. So I would hope that that'll be a part of our discussion.
That's yes, because we had 9 to 11 trades sign on, and I believe that was one of them.
Stonemasons?
Councilor
But also
Bay.
to your point about the residual work that will happen because of the different traffic patterns that will happen as a result of the community grid is a point well taken.
And to your point about assessment, I did fail to mention that a next stage development of the Syracuse Build organization is the creation of a review council of stakeholders who will regularly, on a quarterly basis, assess the results of the Syracuse Build program and the outcomes. That will be comprised of many different entities who are involved in workforce and job training and construction who will work together as a review council. Okay. Still to be created.
We won't have the same members from the steering committee.
It'll be a different group.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be a different group.
Okay.
Any other councilors? Yeah.
So I'm going to miss this when Councilor Bay asked this question, but the city's direct involvement in terms of staff, in terms of resources, what does that look like?
Mm-hmm. Our involvement has been the work that we have done as staff for the city to try to drive this forward, working with the partners. So we've worked with WorkTrain, and then right after that with our anchor project partners to all together lift this project forward with the resources that we've had to date, with a plan to go forward to attract additional resources. So along the way, President Hudson, as an example, has been working with us on the HOPE and AEI funding, which is one of the paths we hope to see happen.
On a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, there's not like a specific staff member that's only working on this. It's more convening power of existing staff.
Yep.
We're all in to make it successful.
And then the second question is, and Council President Hudson touched upon this, but what are the specific trades and what does that training look like, I guess, in the weeds a little bit more?
So I don't think any of our building and trade or carpenters partners are here today, and I don't have, Counselor, a good list of the specific trades in the folder I brought that building and trades and carpenters work with. So I'm hesitant to try to get into the weeds and answer that question. I'm going to quickly appeal and see if I've got any of our steering committee partners who would feel comfortable talking about any of the specific trades.
Take a shot at
I know it was
Okay.
electric.
There's one who would know more than me.
IBW Local 43, painters, carpenters you called.
Yep.
Plumbers are
still
there.
fitters.
Plumbers and still fitters. I'm trying to think the masonaries. I'm trying to think who all was in that room because it was 9 to 11 that signed on. So it's quite a few, and they start from
But that covers a
the
lot.
help of EOC and CNY, they're going to get the basics to be able to get into the pipeline to go into apprenticeships.
Okay.
And then, is the idea also that someone could come through it, be a more entry-level type trade, and then maybe come back 5 years later and go to the more advanced? Is it the idea being kind of an ongoing?
Well, some of the folks going to come in and they're not going to have to do basics. You're going to have folks that's going to walk in that's going to be able to say, okay, I can go to this level and I can move a little further. Some people are going to be accelerated because they're already doing it. So it's going to depend on the person.
We will absolutely know that we've been successful if down the line, years down the line, people have gotten enough work to become masters in these fields, in these unions.
Journey.
And that's obviously where the assessment comes into play. All right, that's the part that I said was important. So, Councilor Green.
The biggest point for me is that a person doesn't finish the great training they're getting from Tim Penix and CNY Works and they have a certificate and no job. I cannot emphasize that enough.
Right.
Wait, repeat that for me because I think that's
The biggest success for me in measuring this as we go forward is that repeatedly, I think everyone around this table says that we've had training programs that have trained people and they've gotten skills and they're viable skills, but it didn't result in them having a paycheck and a reliable paycheck and a consistent paycheck, which is why Syracuse Build just can't be construction. It has to be construction related.
which really bring me to this question. As somebody that is in the community, the training that I have seen here have been done by Work Train, and I guess for me, Work Train has been pumping people out, training people, pushing them, and connecting them with construction trade unions. And for me, which I'm trying to understand what is not working with what we have currently that allow us to come in at this point to say this is going to work. So I'm asking what are we going to do different?
So first, Work Train is the infrastructure. And people from Center State, if I'm wrong, correct me, but it is the infrastructure about how you can set up a training program and be able to make sure it's functioning. The various skills that you're looking, whether it's in the health industry, whether it's in the construction industry, really, they are a conduit for bringing the experts in the room. So Health Train has been very successful in getting people into the health field, but it really was connecting Center State with the people in the health industry and bridging that gap. That's what we're looking to do with Syracuse Build. Why reinvent the wheel? Use that same mechanism, the great relationship that Tim has and what he does in bringing them together with what has been the huge missing part is that we have, through Councilor Hudson and through the work from the trades, understanding that as a community preparing for 81, we have to all be on the same table to get our people to work on that project. If we don't, there is potential for people coming from all over this country, which will happen because of the size of the project. But we need our folks on there. So I think there was a, excuse my, religious pun, a coming home to Jesus moment for everyone, that we all have to be on the same page about this. And so I think that from our Workforce Investment Board to our SUNY trainers to our union friends to our public stakeholders, we all came together and said, if we can't get our people to one of the biggest infrastructure opportunities in this community on that site, we have sold out a whole generation of opportunity.
If I can add to that as well, Councilor, I understand the point of your question, and I think another thing that makes this different is it's more of a wholesale approach. It's a much larger approach. Work Train had very specific targets, and geographical locations that it operated in, and this is essentially a much larger project. You have much more people involved, and I think the main component here, as you expressed, Deputy Mayor, and again to the credit of the Council President, is we're talking about the skills gap being filled, because that's ultimately when people are looking for qualified persons to work, the argument is the inability to find people with the necessary skills. And so that's the major part of this, that it really makes it different than what's happened before.
Councilor, if I could add one last point on this that I think is really consequential, in addition to those points about what makes this different. I think a major step forward is the involvement of major institutions who are Syracuse University, upstate, county, city, saying these issues of local hiring, these issues of hiring from diverse communities, these issues of hiring veterans is critically important to us, and it will be a priority to us on our projects. That's one really key point. And then you add to it that working around the same table right now, we have a collection of partners who have not worked around the same table before about these issues, from the major institutions to the labor organizations, to community advocates who sometimes or to also some of the training partners, all around the same table. And we've had silos in the past, and we're getting rid of those silos and all working together.
So could I just ask a few questions here? So all these entities, City of Syracuse, Onondaga, Syracuse University, SUNY, they've all pledged to use people from Syracuse Build. Is that a legal agreement or something that we thrown together as far as that goes?
The partners are agreeing to each will establish its own memorandum of understanding of its commitments to the program, starting with institutional commitment to how it will prioritize the goals of Syracuse Build, to looking at process improvements of what they can do to improve their hiring processes, and to setting specific goals, objectives, and incentives that they'll use to encourage greater local, minority, and veteran hiring.
You know, and I certainly want to commend the members of the council that have been involved in this, and certainly the city administration. You know, I was on the first joint school construction board, and we had a training program, and the way it worked out is that we trained a lot of people, but by the time that we trained them, the project was almost ended. Yeah, we are always behind, right? And you know, one of the things I think that we have to be cognizant of course, with the, you know, the community grid and the Route 81 coming down, is that more or less that will be a project labor agreement, and Syracuse Build will have to be part of that project labor agreement. And I know legally, and I think you alluded to the Los Angeles, the CBA in Los Angeles, sometimes those are difficult things to coalesce into one agreement, as President Hudson probably knows.
They're two different conversations, but they wedge together Syracuse Build and what's going to happen with the big table. That's why we're having all of those policy stakeholders in the room.
And what kind of leverage would the city have to make sure that happens?
Other than the goodwill of our partners to better serve their constituency.
I think the Common Council and the city administration is certainly be on board to make sure local people are hired, but I'm just wondering, maybe our state representatives should be sitting there with us too. Make sure that happens.
So the big table meeting on the 20th will have those state representatives and members from this council in the room as well, and an opportunity to have those candid conversations about commitment.
And we did talk about private developers, and I suggest that maybe some of the developers ask for benefits from the Syracuse Industrial Development Agency. Maybe that'd be an interesting conversation to have with them, to use people from Syracuse Build.
Which for me, I just want to be clear, as a follow-up question to what I asked. Would it be fair to say that going into this Syracuse Build, right, there are more guarantees than what we have currently? Would it be fair to say that?
Guarantee is a dangerous word.
Councilor Bay said what I was going to say.
Okay.
There's never a guarantee, but I think that we are creating, I'll borrow a word, a holistic path and it's not segmented that this person is doing the training, that person, and really borrowing from Dominic, really employer-generated training. We have trained in soft skills historically and trained to prepare people for work, but never asked the employer what they needed in employable skills. That is the methodology we're using now.
Okay. Which, you said, if I heard you correctly, you said it's going to be 100 people a year?
Our goal this year is to be able to get 100 people. We hope it can grow beyond that.
Okay. So what would be the cost to put those people through? Do you know?
I couldn't give you a per-person cost or a total cost at this stage as we develop the program budgets.
Okay.
I just want to add further. I know you want to go, Councilor Rudd. Don't have a heart attack. This is just for the sake of everybody's information, because I know oftentimes, and then, Councilor Majoke, to your point, the preference for many of us would be that we can get guarantees, but we know with so many different wills at the table, that's a hard thing to muster. You have the feds who have a lot of say. You have the state who has the ultimate say relative to 81. And then, of course, our input with hopes, to the Deputy Mayor's point, that they listen to us because we live here. That's our hope. But it's hard to, for the same reason that the Supreme Court ruled against set-asides, right? You can't really guarantee.
And I guess why I asked that question is, I more than anything, is it would be a concern to say that, we are trying to take this path to be able to reduce, unemployment rate for those that we train and send them nowhere, right? I asked that to just be cautious in terms of, if we do this and there are no guarantees, wouldn't that be multiplying what we were running away from?
But I wouldn't want to stop an effort to correct past mistakes, because we're learning about past mistakes. One of the past mistakes we've made is training, what I call for training's sake, because soft skills is important. But unless there is some industry, some data, this is really data-driven as well, about what potential jobs are even going to be available on that site, or generally in our region that are available, having conversations with our transportation partners, which is an ongoing conversation. So I would never want to stop progress because of the fear that we're going to fall short, because I think that anytime we fall short, it's going to be a little less short. It's going to be better.
Kind of the way Councilor Bate said he wanted to express his support for it, I would expect that everybody in the room supports the spirit of Syracuse Build, and I would expect most people in this room have supported this type of initiative for a decade, 2 decades, more, and it hasn't always happened. And I hear a lot of like blah 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 grad school capstone blah 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 process blah blah blah, but I don't, kind of what Councilor Majoke was saying, like what will be different. And I guess, to put it bluntly, when I look at this little flow chart that has a lot of empty bubbles, which makes it hard, and then I hear targets of, we're gonna have 100 in the first year, I start to worry. I think the box I would focus on are the trade unions, and I would talk about data and statistics. So how many members do each of the trade unions have, and what's the gender and racial composition of their union? Because we know that for too long, too many of the unions are too white and too male. Right? That's the fundamental problem here. So we're talking about it because we've got I-81, and we're about to spend $1 billion tearing it down and rebuilding something. But the problem has been here for a very long time. And I don't quite understand. We're not even talking, like, where is the data? I would implore people to have very public data. When we get RFPs, President Hudson in particular, we go at people for them to share the composition of their company. And we're, as people who believe in unions, we're about to fight for PLAs for this project, for unions that may not reflect the community in any sense of community. in this city. So I think we need to be really blunt that, like, it's a trade union issue. We do need partners to get people who have
Councilor
historically
Rudd,
been underrepresented.
I'm not trying to interrupt you, but let me just say this. The unions didn't come knocking on the door and ask for this, okay? I went to them because what you said is true, and we're trying to get people through the pipeline. I think they're fine where they are.
We do, and I think we have partners who are probably getting more people through. But at the end of the day, if we don't, I mean, if the trade union in particular doesn't have plans to hire, what's their plan to hire? How many are they going to hire? How many do they have to hire?
But that's why they're at the table, because they do plan to hire, because they're aging out, and they do have to hire new recruits to replace the population that's aging.
And I can't remember any time before now that this kind of conversation has been happening with the trade unions.
And it wasn't. And you're right, I do beat them up about EEOC, but again, we're trying to move forward now because this has never happened before.
I know, but I just think one of the metrics should be really expressly that, so we can see the improvement.
Agreed.
Which I think, you know, data is very, very important. So I know that the program is at the very infancy stage. Let's feed the public with data. Let's get stuff that we need to really look at this stuff. Where is the need exactly, and what does that need look like? Yeah.
I think we have to be fair in regards to the skepticism, though. The skepticism is warranted.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we've kind of been here a few times before.
Absolutely.
You know, so, you know,
Or even our own police department. Like, we've had a consent decree for a while. That's our police department.
Councilor Bear, your point is taken.
May I ask a question?
Councilor Allen, any questions?
All right, yeah, that's very quick. So you mentioned, I think it was Greg, you mentioned that you guys did a pilot before, and it was for 55 people? It was a total of 55 people?
55 went to the job, were signed up at the job fair.
Okay, but only 9 actually, like, completed the program or the process?
9 came through the training.
Okay, and so since this was a pilot program, and the goal now is for 100 people to actually go through the program, so what's your next steps? Now that you've completed the pilot, what's your next step starting tomorrow? Because it's a lot of conversation about 81, but Syracuse Build is happening right now, and 81 is going to be coming down the pipeline, but what are we going to do?
Well, one thing is to find out why the others didn't make it through.
Okay.
That's an important statistical next step.
Okay.
To find out what happened. Did they find something else and moved on? So that's one thing that is practical. That happens a lot of time in training, that people don't make it through and then they vanish and we don't know what happened to them. Okay. And just because somebody didn't finish the training, the fact that they started the training showed the incentive and their interest of participating. So we shouldn't just, people don't become the invisible man. We need to be able to track people down.
Okay.
Councilor, the director that will come on board, key responsibility is identifying projects that the anchor partners have in the pipeline and aligning those projects with the training and hiring at the other end of the perspective so that they meet in the middle and create real careers. And so a key next step is completing the hire of that individual and then going through that process of identifying projects that the anchor partners have and making sure that the training on the job seeker side is lined up. And that's how we'll get success.
And to Councilor Allen's point, the manager's role will be that on the ground managing where people are and finding out what's going on. And the community stakeholders are the real champions in this, because if they're running into daycare, what's almost a case management kind of role.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Where are we at with in the hiring process of the director?
We narrowed it down to, I believe, 6 candidates, and we're going to start interviewing.
Okay.
Start interviewing.
When are we? Do you know when we'll probably start? Yeah, we're trying to coordinate calendars of the search committee to do the interviews. Trust me, we want to get this person on board.
Okay.
Okay, should we?
And then a year from now, we should be able to have the data.
Yes, ma'am.
To be able to back up everything that we're working toward.
Yep.
Great. So We're coming on close to an hour. It's been a great meeting thus far. Thank you again, Chief Lowe and Mayor Owens. CPO.
Okay.
I like that, CPO. That's good. It's quick. It pops. We promised Urban Jobs Task Force that we would allow them to make a few statements or ask a few questions, whatever they felt. Aggie, if you'd like to say a few words, or if anybody else representing, and we know that Urban Jobs Task Force has been an entity that's been pushing, wanting to see better from everybody as far as the employment record goes for this region. They've really been great advocates for the cause, so we'd love to hear from you, Aggie, if you had any other questions. That wasn't you, Aggie, was it?
I just want to
Rich, I knew it.
sort of connect something that I heard. There was going to be a review committee, and then Troll and Tim was saying we need data to see how we're doing. And to have a review committee not reviewing data would be a useless process. So there's got to be data. And the thing I learned, somebody's got to look at the data and analyze the data. So on I-690, the Teal interchange, they had great language in the project labor agreement for apprenticeships. The language was perfect. But obviously nobody looked at the data, because the data is miserable. There are only 4% of the hours were apprenticeship hours. So even if we get our people into the unions, they won't work on I-81. And the other thing, only 0.6% were minority workers in the apprenticeships. So nobody was looking at that data. So that's 50% data, but we're trying to get 100% data from the DOT, but we probably think that trend's out there. So I just want to say, so here's some questions I sort of have. I-81 will need skilled workers in various trades. UJTF has done some research on training and knows that there is a training specifically for heavy highway work. What kind of training is Syracuse Build going to offer to get people ready for I-81, which is, in a sense, a dangerous kind of construction site? So that's my one question.
I don't think you're going to get answers on most of those tonight because the training programs have not yet been developed.
Okay, so I'm hoping, for example, the carpenters have two prevailing wages, one for heavy highway and one for commercial carpentry. So that's a special training. You go out to the NCCER folks, and they actually have these textbooks for heavy highway training. So I get a little worried personally that you're going to do a quick certificate, a little OSHA, and try to get them on there. I don't think this is really what we need if we want skilled people on I-81. This is another question. Maybe you can't answer it yet. For people struggling to make ends meet, will Syracuse Build offer stipends so people can pay the bills while they're being trained? Help with childcare, help with transportation.
That is envisioned as part of what funding will be needed for and funding we're seeking to cover. Absolutely. We know people can't access training effectively without it.
Okay. So after people have successfully completed training, how will Syracuse Build make sure they get on a construction job? You sort of answered that one. But after that construction job ends, how will Syracuse Build make sure they get hired on their next construction job or go to the next level of training? I think people say once they get them on a construction site in the past, hey, we did good, but then that job ends.
Right.
So, So this is sort of the follow-up to that. Over the last decade or more, the Joint School Construction Board, responsible for the city's renovation project, has been training people in the basics of construction. Will you put energy into recruiting these people who already got the basics so Syracuse Build can upgrade their skills? Yes. Okay.
So, Aggie, can I ask you a question before you leave? So, since you have all the data on that, do you have the data on how many people went through the trades and actually worked maybe 2 weeks to 2 months and fell off?
I just have the hours. So I have the hours where almost all the hours were white men. That's all.
Right. I just wanted to know if you had any more, because my son went through IBEW, and my son decided he didn't want to go back after about 6 months, and he just fell off. So do you keep track of people like that?
Yeah, that's the way when you foil the data, you get what they want to give you,
Right, but it works
and
two
that's
ways.
the
We
report.
have people that fall out,
Yep.
and we have people that want to continue to move forward. So
Right.
it does work 2 ways.
But I think I agree with you, and it's good to be able to drill into the data and to know why your numbers are your numbers. You know, whether people are falling off or whether there's not enough support out there to get them to work, to deal with the child care issues, whatever the issues are, or to deal with maybe racism on the work site, and it's not a friendly place to work. I don't know, but we should know, you know, if the numbers aren't good, why they're not good. That's all.
So Aggie, your data's from the first phase of the joint schools or not?
690
The 690, the Teal Avenue, which was part of I-81 that they fast-tracked outside of it. So that pre-PLA we read, and there is a great section on apprenticeships. And if they actually had monitored it and then wondered why the hours were so low, they might have been able to do something. So LA Metro has a requirement that there be, that 20% of the hours are for apprentices. And then I think 50% of that 20% have to be for underrepresented people, low-income people that they are recruiting. So those are the kinds of goals, and then you enforce it by collecting data and running interference when it's not happening.
I think the crux of the message is probably something that we know government struggles with all the time, even though this is not just government alone, and that's the idea of enforcement or finishing the project. We often, legislators come up with ideas and put it on paper, and stakeholders get involved and put the ideas on paper, but somewhere in the machine it gets lost, to Aggie's point. And so that's what we're hoping, again, Councilman Joke, that with so many components involved, that's what would make this different.
I think it's all in data, and then paying attention to the data and figuring out why things aren't working.
Well, and
Yeah.
people like Urban Jobs Task Force and others, making sure that we're staying on task with it.
Well, it has to be part of whatever agreement is out there, whether it be Syracuse Build with the anchor partners. They have to take data, they have to report it, whether it's I-81 and a PLA. There's got to be some sort of mechanism out of that big table that they're taking data, they're looking at it, and they're figuring out why it's not working. That's all I've got.
Yeah. I see some gentleman in the front row has his hand up. This is only because you're a regular resident here, Mr. Pachowski.
Don't hit the mic. Don't hit the mic.
We should charge
Don't
them.
buy that microphone. Go ahead, we're listening.
We should charge them rent.
Ms. Owens,
Yes, sir.
so on the Syracuse Build, the Urban Jobs Task Force will never have to file a FOIL to get answers to their questions.
No, because they're going to be part of the review committee.
Yeah. They're heavily involved.
Is there a tape recorder, and who's taking the minutes of this meeting?
Front row.
All recorded. All recorded.
And on YouTube.
Rich, ain't you on YouTube, man? Come on. We're up on the internet.
We're just.
You can hold us accountable. Do we
We'll
say a
edit
few
him
words
off.
from Walt?
Get my violin.
Walt, if you'd like to come say a few words, and then I think we'll try to. We're about the hour mark, so we'll try to wrap it up shortly.
Yeah, first of all, I want to commend you folks for really looking at this, but I want to just throw a bigger picture at you, looking at Syracuse Build, really is going to be evolving. So we had a job fair last week. Hewitt Brewer participated, never knew who Jubilee Homes was. They hired 25 folks from our community. I think 23 showed up to work. So we know, excuse me. So we know the folks want to work. But I think that as you evolve this process, when you start doing the metrics of like the type of jobs, the number of jobs, time frame of jobs, skill level of jobs, we got to be thinking building a workforce over the next 5 years. In the first year, you're not going to hit the numbers you want to hit in terms of the skillful jobs. But you need to understand what this coalition, this organization, Syracuse Build, will help us begin to systematically develop the strategy in the long-term process. But at the same time, the low-hanging fruits is that as you look at building these 200 homes or other developers are doing work in the city of Syracuse, how can we collaborate and work with them simultaneously to create these opportunities that you're talking about? So we see that Jubilee working with EOC, we are on the same page. We got to create really jobs. We do have some national developers of color coming to Syracuse, so these folks are aware of them, that will come in here in partnership with community and minority companies to do some of this work. Particularly, we have one of the largest minority demolitions companies in the country that's in Syracuse having these conversations that can train folks from learning how to work a jackhammer as well as learning how to drive a forklift. And still partnership with the union. So you're going to do all these things. You're going to deal with union, private partnerships when it comes to Syracuse, to work with minority contractors to help build them, to begin to hire folks. So this is going to have so many turning points of creating opportunities. But what you need is someone systematically, strategically bringing it all together. Understanding what is the need of these developers, like Hano Hoyt said to us, and they was amazed, and they've been talking to Twiggy, they want to come back. We just got to develop the workforce, and now as you know through HOPE Initiative, we have 2 vans. We're taking people to work 7 days a week. So how do we take that, folks that need transportation, but more importantly, it's just also the soft skills, working with Tim, Jubilee, with Build to Work, folks that, okay, I have this job, but I have these issues, I got crises in my life. How do we help manage them at the same time so they don't fall off the radar, and how we track them? So we can send you, with your permission, our outline of our program thus far that's daily driven for this free transportation. If we can work with the Urban Task Force, I'm a member of the Urban Task Force, and working with the city in this content, we can. I'm not interested in being pessimistic, what we didn't do last year, why folks aren't working. We got to figure out how to get them working. And if this company can come to Syracuse and hire 25 people at our job fair, and 23 showed up. Now we got to make sure we follow them, making sure they stay in there, they're taking opportunities. If we create programs with unions or non-unions, training, like this one company said, they have federal stats credentials. They can come and offset some of the stuff that maybe the unions aren't doing. That's okay, but we can figure that out. We need a circle to sit around like this, strategically having these conversations, how we move this bar. So we are excited to be a part of this, and we're not looking forward. We've been a part of all these other failed opportunities, but we don't have time to fail anymore. And so I want to thank you guys for really thinking out of the box and making an investment. And lastly, even institutions, I've said that they need to be, not only be this partnership, show in their portfolio that they're doing the same thing we're asking everybody else. Thank you.
All right. Appreciate everybody coming out. God bless. Good night.
Appreciate it. And if anybody out there has any additional input, please feel free to reach out to the council offices or our emails. We'd love to discuss this further with anybody who has further input for us. Thanks much for all the partners.
I was afraid you were going to yell at me. Thanks, students.